Learn to push through resistance. A practical guide to overcoming resistance, conquering fear, and building resilience for personal and professional growth. By T.M. Light. Description: This book is a practical motivational guide for anyone ready to overcome fear, self-doubt, procrastination, and external obstacles. It teaches readers how to identify personal resistance, develop a resilient mindset, create actionable habits, and build systems that make persistence automatic. Through strategies for harnessing motivation, leveraging support networks, confronting fear, and turning setbacks into growth opportunities, readers discover how to transform resistance into a catalyst for personal and professional mastery. Perfect for entrepreneurs, creatives, and ambitious individuals, this guide empowers consistent action, long-term growth, and fulfillment in every area of life. Chapter Outline. Introduction: Understanding resistance and why it matters. Chapter 1: Identifying your resistance. Chapter 2: Understanding the psychology behind resistance. Chapter 3: Cultivating a resilient mindset. Chapter 4: Setting clear goals to combat resistance. Chapter 5: Creating habits that overcome resistance. Chapter 6: Harnessing motivation and energy. Chapter 7: Using accountability and support systems. Chapter 8: Pushing through fear and self-doubt. Chapter 9: Turning resistance into growth opportunities. Chapter 10: Creating a life that resists resistance. Conclusion: Embracing resistance as a path to mastery. Introduction: Understanding resistance and why it matters. Resistance is a universal experience. It shows up in moments when you know what needs to be done, yet you hesitate. It surfaces as fear, procrastination, self-doubt, or even subtle distractions that derail progress. Resistance can also appear externally, in the form of obstacles, unsupportive environments, or people who challenge your efforts. Whether internal or external, resistance is not an enemy to be feared or avoided. It is a natural signal, an indicator that growth is on the horizon and that action, courage, and strategy are required. Understanding resistance is the first step toward learning to push through it, and ultimately, toward achieving a life of greater purpose, fulfillment, and personal power. At its core, resistance is the tension between where you are and where you want to be. It thrives in moments of change, challenge, or ambition. When you decide to pursue a goal, start a new habit, or step into uncharted territory, resistance emerges as part of the process. This tension is uncomfortable, but it is precisely this discomfort that signals transformation. Resistance is not a punishment. It is a marker that you are stepping beyond the familiar, beyond the safe and predictable, into the realm where growth, achievement, and meaningful progress occur. Recognizing this truth is crucial. Resistance is an invitation to engage, not a warning to retreat. Internal resistance is often the most insidious, because it disguises itself as rationality. You may feel tired, unmotivated, or uncertain, convincing yourself that postponing action is justified. You might tell yourself, "I'll start tomorrow," or "I'm not ready yet." This self-sabotaging voice feeds fear, perfectionism, and doubt. Yet internal resistance is rarely a reflection of your true capacity. It is a signal that you are confronting discomfort, that you are stretching your limits, and that the action ahead is meaningful. Learning to recognize the difference between fear-driven hesitation and thoughtful preparation is key. Resistance is an indicator that something valuable lies on the other side of discomfort. External resistance is equally powerful. Obstacles appear in your environment: time constraints, unsupportive colleagues, limited resources, or unexpected challenges. Life often conspires against progress in subtle or overt ways, testing your determination. While you cannot always control external circumstances, you can control your response. External resistance is not a barrier to success, but a challenge to your resourcefulness, creativity, and perseverance. By learning to adapt and persist, you transform obstacles from deterrents into opportunities to strengthen resilience and sharpen skills. Understanding resistance requires a shift in mindset. Too often, resistance is interpreted as a signal to stop, a sign of inadequacy, or evidence that a goal is unreachable. Yet this perspective undermines growth and potential. The truth is that resistance is a natural companion to ambition and transformation. Every person who has achieved mastery, fulfilled a dream, or transformed a life has confronted resistance. They did not avoid it, they learned to move through it. Resistance is not the opposite of progress, it is the doorway to it. Embracing this mindset is the foundation for developing the strategies and habits that allow you to push through obstacles, self-doubt, and distraction. The first step in embracing resistance is awareness. Begin by observing where resistance appears in your life. Is it strongest in your career, your health, your relationships, or personal growth goals? Notice the patterns. Awareness is not judgment, it is observation. By clearly identifying the moments and forms of resistance, you remove much of its power. Resistance thrives in ambiguity and unexamined habits. Bringing it into consciousness allows you to meet it with strategy and intention rather than reaction and avoidance. Next comes acceptance. Accept that resistance is inevitable, and that discomfort is part of meaningful progress. Fighting resistance with frustration or self-criticism often intensifies it. Instead, approach resistance as a teacher. Ask yourself, what is this resistance signaling? What is valuable on the other side of this discomfort? Acceptance allows you to acknowledge the challenge without becoming paralyzed by it. It transforms resistance from an adversary into an ally, pointing you toward the areas in your life that require courage, focus, and growth. The introduction of practical strategies is also essential. Pushing through resistance is not solely a matter of willpower, it is a skill that can be cultivated. Techniques such as breaking tasks into small, manageable steps, creating accountability structures, and establishing habits that automate action are all tools that help overcome both internal and external resistance. Mindset exercises, visualization, and reflection further strengthen the ability to act even when motivation wanes. By combining awareness, acceptance, and practical strategies, you develop a holistic approach to resistance that is both empowering and sustainable. Resistance also has a motivational function. Its presence often highlights goals that truly matter. If an action feels challenging, uncomfortable, or scary, it is likely stretching your abilities and pushing you into new territory. The intensity of resistance often correlates with the potential for growth. By learning to interpret resistance as a sign that something meaningful is at stake, you can transform fear and hesitation into fuel for action. Resistance is not a reason to stop, it is a compass guiding you toward meaningful achievement. Throughout this book, you will discover actionable exercises, motivational insights, and practical strategies for pushing through resistance in every area of life. You will learn to observe resistance without judgment, to break it into manageable steps, and to cultivate habits that make persistence automatic. You will explore techniques for managing fear, procrastination, and self-doubt, and for turning obstacles into opportunities for growth. Each chapter builds on the previous one, guiding you from awareness to mastery, and helping you transform resistance from a source of frustration into a catalyst for progress. Ultimately, learning to push through resistance is about reclaiming agency. It is about refusing to be paralyzed by fear, hesitation, or circumstance. It is about approaching life with courage, intentionality, and perseverance. Resistance is not a signal to retreat, It is an invitation to engage, to stretch, to grow, and to move forward despite discomfort. When you embrace resistance in this way, every challenge becomes an opportunity, every hesitation a signal, and every ordinary day a chance to cultivate extraordinary resilience and purpose. By the end of this book, you will have a toolkit to confront resistance confidently. You will be equipped to navigate internal doubt, external obstacles, and the ordinary hesitations that hold people back from achieving their potential. You will understand that resistance is not a threat to progress but an integral part of it, a natural, necessary, and even empowering force in the journey toward meaningful, intentional living. Resistance is not the enemy, it is the signpost. It is the indicator that you are stretching, learning, and moving toward growth. This book is your guide to recognizing, accepting, and pushing through resistance, so that you can step into a life defined not by fear or hesitation but by courage, action, and fulfillment. The journey begins now, in the ordinary moments of your life, each of which holds the potential to become extraordinary when approached with intention and perseverance. Chapter 1: Identifying your resistance. Resistance is universal, yet it manifests differently for each individual. For some, it appears as procrastination, the endless scrolling of social media, the repeated "I'll start tomorrow," or the subtle avoidance of tasks that matter most. For others, it takes the form of fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of stepping beyond the comfort zone into the unknown. Some experience resistance as self-sabotage, creating distractions, delaying decisions, or convincing themselves that their goals are unattainable. Resistance is not random, it follows patterns, and the first step to overcoming it is recognizing where, when, and how it shows up in your life. Understanding your personal resistance requires honest reflection. Many of us live on autopilot, moving through routines without noticing the small ways we avoid discomfort. We may complain about our circumstances, yet simultaneously ignore opportunities for change. Resistance thrives in this invisibility, in the moments where we fail to observe our own hesitation. By shining a light on these patterns, you begin to reclaim control. Recognizing resistance is not about judgment or self-criticism, it is about awareness, clarity, and insight. The moment you name the ways you avoid action, you diminish the power resistance has over your life. One of the most common manifestations of resistance is procrastination. Procrastination is not laziness, it is a symptom of deeper conflict. Often the tasks we resist most are the ones that require growth, vulnerability, or change. Completing an important project, having a difficult conversation, or pursuing a meaningful goal often triggers internal tension. Procrastination provides temporary relief, a false sense of safety, yet the underlying resistance remains. To identify procrastination patterns, observe your behavior closely. When do you delay tasks? What excuses or justifications do you use? What emotions arise when you think about the task you are avoiding? These questions reveal the triggers that fuel procrastination and illuminate the moments when resistance is strongest. Fear is another critical component of resistance. Fear manifests in multiple forms: fear of failure, fear of success, fear of judgment, and fear of the unknown. Each type of fear signals that growth is required. Fear often disguises itself as rationality: "I need more preparation," or "I'm not ready yet." While caution has value, fear that paralyzes is a form of resistance. Identifying fear requires deep introspection. Ask yourself, what am I avoiding because I feel uncertain? Which actions elicit anxiety or discomfort? By naming your fears and tracing them to specific triggers, you gain clarity on the underlying resistance holding you back. Fear is a signal, not a verdict. The recognition of fear is the first step in transforming it into action. Self-sabotage is a subtler, yet equally pervasive form of resistance. Self-sabotage can take the form of overcommitment, perfectionism, or creating unnecessary complications. It is a way of staying within the familiar while undermining long-term goals. Individuals who self-sabotage may take on too many responsibilities, delay critical decisions, or unconsciously choose paths that ensure comfort but prevent growth. To identify self-sabotage, examine recurring patterns in your life where your actions consistently prevent progress. Reflect on moments when you knew the right course but acted in ways that impeded it. This reflection reveals patterns of resistance rooted in subconscious behaviors. Environmental triggers can also amplify resistance. The spaces, people, and routines that surround you have a profound influence on your ability to act. A cluttered workspace, a noisy environment, or unsupportive peers can subtly reinforce avoidance and procrastination. Conversely, an environment designed for focus, encouragement, and accountability can reduce resistance dramatically. Take inventory of your surroundings. Notice the situations, relationships, or routines that either encourage or hinder progress. Understanding these external influences allows you to anticipate resistance and adjust your environment to support consistent action. Self-assessment is a powerful tool for identifying resistance. Begin by journaling daily to track moments when you experience hesitation, discomfort, or avoidance. Record what triggered the resistance, how you responded, and what thoughts or emotions surfaced. Over time, patterns will emerge, revealing the specific areas of life where resistance is strongest. Another approach is reflection exercises, where you ask yourself probing questions: which goals excite me yet intimidate me? Which responsibilities do I consistently delay? What fears prevent me from acting decisively? Answering these questions honestly creates a roadmap of your personal resistance landscape. Resistance often has a cyclical quality. A delayed task triggers guilt, which increases stress, which leads to further avoidance. Fear triggers hesitation, which reduces confidence, which reinforces avoidance. Recognizing these cycles is crucial to breaking them. By mapping out the chain of thoughts, emotions, and actions that accompany resistance, you gain insight into both triggers and consequences. Awareness of these cycles allows you to intervene proactively, disrupting patterns and creating new, intentional responses. An important realization is that resistance is not always negative. It signals areas where personal growth is possible. Resistance is often strongest where the potential for impact and transformation is highest. The activities you most avoid are often the ones that will bring the greatest reward once completed. By reframing resistance as a guide rather than a barrier, you begin to approach it with curiosity and courage rather than frustration or defeat. Resistance becomes a map to the places in your life where meaningful action and growth are most needed. Developing self-awareness is foundational. Resistance cannot be defeated through sheer willpower alone. Without understanding its origins, triggers, and patterns, efforts to overcome it may falter. Awareness allows you to meet resistance with intention rather than reaction. By observing your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, you identify the precise moments where resistance emerges. This knowledge empowers you to create strategies and structures that facilitate progress, even when motivation is low or fear is high. Awareness transforms resistance from a vague obstacle into a clearly defined challenge that can be addressed systematically. One effective technique is to categorize forms of resistance. Start by listing areas in your life where you notice hesitation or avoidance. These could include career goals, health practices, personal development, or relationships. Next, identify the type of resistance present: procrastination, fear, self-sabotage, or environmental obstacles. Then note the triggers for each category. Over time, you will see patterns that highlight where resistance is most potent, and which strategies are likely to be effective. Categorization provides clarity and focus, allowing you to prioritize your efforts where they will have the greatest impact. Journaling and reflection exercises are invaluable in this process. Begin each day by noting potential areas where resistance might appear. At the end of the day, review moments where you acted despite hesitation, as well as instances where resistance won. Reflect on the thoughts, feelings, and actions involved. This continuous practice builds self-knowledge, strengthens resilience, and gradually reduces the power resistance has over your behavior. The practice of reflection transforms passive awareness into actionable insight, allowing consistent growth. Another important exercise is envisioning the cost of resistance. Imagine the long-term effects of inaction or avoidance in areas where resistance appears. Visualizing the consequences of letting resistance dictate your behavior, missed opportunities, stagnation, unfulfilled potential, creates a sense of urgency. At the same time, consider the benefits of pushing through resistance: growth, achievement, confidence, and fulfillment. Contrasting these outcomes motivates action and strengthens resolve, providing a compelling reason to confront hesitation directly. It is also helpful to reframe resistance as a natural part of the process, not a personal failing. Everyone experiences it. Resistance is not a reflection of weakness, laziness, or inadequacy. It is a signal that meaningful action is required. By removing shame or self-criticism from resistance, you allow yourself to approach it objectively and strategically. Resistance becomes a teacher, pointing toward areas where courage, focus, and persistence are most needed. Finally, identifying resistance is about preparation for action. Awareness without response is incomplete. The goal of this chapter is to equip you with the understanding necessary to engage resistance effectively. By observing patterns, categorizing triggers, journaling reflections, and visualizing consequences, you create the foundation for the next step, developing strategies to push through. Resistance will continue to appear throughout life, but when you know its forms, origins, and patterns, you no longer respond passively. You can meet resistance with clarity, intention, and determination, transforming obstacles into opportunities for growth. In summary, identifying your resistance is the essential first step in overcoming it. Resistance manifests as procrastination, fear, self-sabotage, and environmental obstacles. By reflecting on patterns, journaling, categorizing triggers, and visualizing outcomes, you gain clarity about where resistance is strongest and why it appears. Resistance is not a barrier to growth. It is a signal, a guide, and a necessary companion on the path to achievement. Awareness, self-assessment, and honest reflection transform resistance from a vague obstacle into a clearly understood challenge, setting the stage for the strategies and actions that follow in subsequent chapters. By observing your resistance carefully, acknowledging it without judgment, and understanding its patterns and triggers, you prepare yourself to take deliberate action. The more you identify and examine resistance, the less power it holds over your decisions and behaviors. With clarity and awareness, you gain the freedom to push through hesitation, confront fear, and consistently move toward your goals. Resistance becomes less a threat, and more a compass pointing toward where your growth, progress, and fulfillment await. Chapter 2: Understanding the Psychology Behind Resistance. Resistance is not merely a surface-level frustration or an inconvenience to productivity. It is deeply rooted in human psychology. To push through it effectively, you must understand why it exists, how it operates within your mind, and why your brain sometimes conspires against your own growth. Resistance is not a flaw in character or a personal weakness. Rather, it is a natural signal, a psychological mechanism that highlights discomfort, challenge, and change. By understanding the psychology behind resistance, You can transform it from a barrier into a compass pointing toward areas of potential growth and meaningful achievement. At its core, resistance exists because the human brain is wired to avoid discomfort. From an evolutionary standpoint, avoiding risk was a survival mechanism. Our ancestors survived because they were cautious, avoiding threats that could endanger life. While the modern world does not demand constant physical vigilance, the psychological structures of avoidance remain. Resistance is a reflection of that ancient wiring. When faced with a task that challenges your abilities, requires vulnerability, or stretches you beyond your comfort zone, your brain signals discomfort. You may feel tension, fear, hesitation, or doubt. This is the neurological response to perceived threat, not a judgment of your capacity but a natural human tendency to seek safety. One of the most common psychological sources of resistance is the fear of failure. Fear of failure is deeply embedded in the human psyche, and often prevents us from pursuing meaningful goals. It manifests as hesitation, procrastination, and self-doubt. The mind magnifies potential negative outcomes, imagining worst-case scenarios long before taking action. This fear is not irrational, it is protective. However, in modern life where growth and fulfillment require risk, fear of failure can paralyze progress. Recognizing fear as a psychological mechanism allows you to detach from it emotionally. Fear is a signal that you are confronting something that matters, an opportunity for growth disguised as an obstacle. Perfectionism is another significant psychological contributor to resistance. When you feel that your work must be flawless, or that your actions must meet impossibly high standards, resistance grows exponentially. The desire for perfection often leads to avoidance. If the outcome cannot be perfect, the mind convinces you to delay action or avoid it altogether. Perfectionism is a form of self-protection, masking vulnerability and fear of judgment under the guise of high standards. Understanding this pattern reveals that resistance is not a condemnation of effort, but a psychological response to the perceived risk of imperfection. By reframing perfectionism as an unrealistic standard and embracing progress over flawlessness, resistance loses much of its power. Resistance also thrives in the comfort zone. Your comfort zone is a psychological space where routines, habits, and familiar patterns provide safety. Stepping outside this zone triggers internal tension, uncertainty, and unease, the precise conditions that activate resistance. Growth requires moving beyond comfort, yet the mind constantly signals hesitation, generating excuses and distractions to maintain the status quo. This is not laziness. It is a deeply rooted neurological response to novelty and perceived threat. Understanding this allows you to interpret resistance as a signpost. Where you feel most discomfort is often where the greatest opportunities for personal and professional development lie. Procrastination, a behavioral manifestation of resistance, is closely tied to how the brain processes reward and effort. Tasks that are challenging, delayed, or ambiguous trigger a psychological imbalance. The brain prefers short-term gratification and tends to overemphasize the discomfort of effort. Completing a task may yield long-term benefits, but the immediate discomfort or perceived difficulty triggers avoidance. This is why we often delay meaningful work in favor of easier, less important activities. Understanding this neurological tendency allows you to design strategies that work with the brain, rather than against it, such as breaking tasks into smaller steps or creating immediate incentives for action. Another psychological factor behind resistance is the fear of judgment. Humans are inherently social creatures, wired to seek acceptance and avoid rejection. When your actions are visible or have the potential to impact others' perceptions, resistance intensifies. Fear of judgment can manifest as hesitancy in sharing ideas, speaking up, or pursuing goals that may draw attention or criticism. Recognizing that this fear is a natural social adaptation allows you to reframe it. Resistance in these situations is not a verdict on your worth, but a signal that you are stepping into personal growth and authenticity. The brain's tendency to avoid discomfort is also reinforced by habit and routine. Humans are creatures of repetition. Habits reduce cognitive load and conserve energy. Resistance often arises when a task or action disrupts habitual patterns. Your mind interprets novelty or effort as a potential threat, generating internal signals to resist. Understanding the habitual nature of resistance allows you to intervene strategically. By creating routines, automating action, and gradually expanding your comfort zone, you can retrain your brain to respond differently to tasks that once generated hesitation. A critical psychological insight is that resistance is directly proportional to growth potential. The greater the challenge, the more resistance you are likely to encounter. This relationship is not coincidental. Resistance is a reliable indicator that you are confronting meaningful opportunities. Avoiding resistance may provide temporary comfort, but it limits long-term growth and fulfillment. The psychological reframing of resistance, from obstacle to indicator, transforms it into a guide for action. Where you feel most resistance is often where your development, achievement, and personal mastery reside. Motivation and action are deeply intertwined with psychology. Resistance arises when motivation fluctuates, or when the perceived effort outweighs immediate reward. Understanding how the brain evaluates cost and benefit allows you to design strategies that increase motivation and reduce avoidance. Visualization, self-affirmation, and intentional reminders of the benefits of action activate the brain's reward pathways, creating alignment between effort and perceived gain. Motivation is not purely willpower, it is the product of psychological alignment with purpose, values, and meaningful outcomes. Understanding resistance also involves recognizing cognitive distortions. Your mind may exaggerate risk, magnify potential failure, or generate catastrophic scenarios that amplify hesitation. These distorted perceptions fuel resistance, making challenges appear insurmountable. Awareness of these cognitive biases allows you to confront them objectively. By questioning assumptions, evaluating evidence, and breaking tasks into smaller, actionable steps, you reduce the psychological power of resistance and create space for action. Another essential element is the role of emotional regulation. Resistance is closely linked to emotional responses such as anxiety, frustration, and self-doubt. Emotional intensity can cloud judgment and reinforce avoidance. Learning to observe emotions without judgment, and to regulate emotional responses through mindfulness or reflection, strengthens resilience and reduces the grip of resistance. By managing the psychological and emotional components together, action becomes more attainable and sustainable. The psychology of resistance also highlights the importance of identity. Resistance often arises when there is a disconnect between who you believe you are and the actions required for growth. If the task challenges your self-concept, internal hesitation intensifies. For instance, if you see yourself as a cautious person, taking bold steps may feel unnatural and trigger resistance. Understanding this connection between identity and resistance allows you to reframe action as an extension of the person you aspire to become. Gradually integrating behaviors aligned with your desired identity reduces internal conflict and the power of resistance. Resistance is not a static force, it fluctuates depending on context, energy, and mindset. Your psychological state influences how strongly resistance manifests. Fatigue, stress, or lack of clarity intensifies avoidance. Conversely, focus, energy, and positive anticipation reduce its impact. Recognizing these psychological patterns allows for strategic intervention, scheduling demanding tasks when energy is high, preparing mentally for challenging actions, and leveraging periods of focus to act decisively. A final psychological insight is that resistance is a measure of your commitment to growth. Where resistance exists, there is opportunity. Every hesitation is a chance to practice courage, resilience, and persistence. By seeing resistance through this lens, you shift perception from victimhood to agency. Resistance ceases to be an obstacle imposed by the world or your mind. It becomes a signpost indicating areas where your effort and courage will yield meaningful results. The psychology of resistance is not about eliminating discomfort. It is about understanding, engaging, and growing through it. In summary, understanding the psychology behind resistance reveals that it is a natural, universal, and deeply meaningful phenomenon. Resistance emerges from fear of failure, perfectionism, comfort zones, avoidance of discomfort, fear of judgment, and cognitive distortions. It is reinforced by habit, emotional intensity, and misaligned identity. Yet resistance is not a flaw, it is a signal. By understanding its psychological origins, you gain insight into why hesitation occurs, why procrastination is appealing, and why stepping into challenge can feel daunting. Resistance is not a barrier, it is an indicator of growth, opportunity, and potential. By recognizing the psychology of resistance, you equip yourself with a framework for engagement rather than avoidance. You see hesitation as a signal, discomfort as a guide, and fear as an opportunity. Understanding your mind's natural responses allows you to approach resistance with strategy, awareness, and courage. Every form of resistance is an invitation to expand, stretch, and step into the life you aspire to live. Resistance becomes not a wall but a compass, pointing you toward growth, mastery, and meaningful achievement. Chapter 3: Cultivating a Resilient Mindset. Resilience is the cornerstone of pushing through resistance. It is the inner strength that allows you to stand firm in the face of challenges, to move forward despite fear, doubt, or setbacks, and to transform obstacles into opportunities for growth. Developing a resilient mindset is not about avoiding discomfort or pretending that difficulties do not exist. Rather, it is about cultivating a way of thinking and being that embraces challenges as catalysts for growth, builds unwavering confidence, and encourages persistent action even when motivation falters. Resilience is not a trait reserved for a select few. It is a skill, a mindset, and a practice that anyone can develop. To cultivate resilience, you must first understand the relationship between mindset and perception. Resistance, failure, and setbacks are inevitable, yet the way you interpret them determines their impact on your life. Individuals with resilient mindsets view challenges as opportunities to learn, adapt, and strengthen themselves. In contrast, those who lack resilience often perceive obstacles as insurmountable threats, leading to frustration, avoidance, and stagnation. The first step in cultivating a resilient mindset is to recognize that your thoughts shape your experience of difficulty. By consciously shifting your perception from threat to opportunity, you begin to dismantle the paralyzing effects of resistance. Reframing challenges is a powerful tool in building resilience. Every obstacle carries information. It shows where growth is needed, highlights gaps in skill or preparation, and provides a test of character. When you encounter resistance, rather than seeing it as a stop sign, reframe it as a guidepost. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can this situation make me stronger? What skills or strengths will I gain by facing this? This reframing transforms fear, frustration, and hesitation into motivation and direction. It allows you to act with purpose, even when circumstances are difficult or uncomfortable. Embracing discomfort is another essential component of a resilient mindset. The mind naturally seeks comfort, safety, and predictability, yet growth rarely occurs in these zones. Discomfort is the signal that you are stepping beyond your current capabilities, stretching into uncharted territory where potential lies. Resilient individuals do not avoid discomfort, they lean into it, understanding that it is the fuel for personal transformation. By consciously practicing discomfort in small, deliberate ways, such as taking on challenging projects, initiating difficult conversations, or learning new skills, you gradually expand your capacity to endure, adapt, and thrive. Confidence is closely intertwined with resilience. A resilient mindset requires belief in your ability to navigate uncertainty and overcome obstacles. Confidence is not arrogance or certainty, it is the trust in your capacity to act, adapt, and persist. Building confidence begins with action. Each step you take in the face of resistance reinforces your belief in yourself. Success is not the only teacher here. Even attempts that do not go perfectly strengthen confidence when you approach them with intention and reflection. Confidence and resilience grow hand in hand. Persistent action builds confidence, and confidence empowers further action. Persistence is another key element. Resistance often appears as a series of obstacles rather than a single event. Developing resilience means sustaining effort over time, regardless of immediate results. It is the repeated act of choosing action over avoidance, growth over stagnation. Persistence is fueled by purpose. When your goals align with your values and personal vision, your commitment to act becomes stronger. This alignment provides a foundation for enduring challenges without losing focus or motivation. Resilience is not temporary. It is the steady, ongoing capacity to move forward, day after day, in pursuit of meaningful outcomes. Proactive thinking distinguishes resilient individuals from those who react to circumstances. Rather than waiting for challenges to dictate action, resilient people anticipate obstacles and prepare strategies to address them. Proactivity involves foresight, planning, and resourcefulness. It requires evaluating potential resistance points, creating contingency plans, and developing systems that reduce friction. When you anticipate challenges, resistance becomes less intimidating because you have already equipped yourself with tools, strategies, and confidence to respond effectively. Proactive engagement transforms obstacles into manageable, navigable situations, reinforcing resilience. Emotional regulation is an essential skill in cultivating a resilient mindset. Resistance often triggers fear, frustration, anger, or anxiety, which can cloud judgment and impede action. Resilient individuals learn to observe their emotions without being controlled by them. Techniques such as deep breathing, mindfulness, and cognitive reframing help create space between stimulus and response. This space allows deliberate, purposeful action rather than impulsive reaction. Emotional resilience strengthens the ability to navigate resistance calmly and effectively, reducing the likelihood of avoidance or self-sabotage. Self-reflection is another critical practice. Resilience is not merely reacting to challenges in the moment, it is learning from experience and integrating insights into future action. After facing resistance, take time to reflect. What did I learn about myself? How did I respond? What strategies worked and what could be improved? Reflection transforms each encounter with resistance into a source of wisdom. Over time, this continuous feedback loop strengthens resilience, sharpens judgment, and builds confidence in your capacity to handle future challenges. Resilient individuals also embrace a growth mindset. Coined by psychologist Carol Dweck, a growth mindset is the belief that abilities, intelligence, and skills can be developed through effort, practice, and learning. Resistance is not a signal of inadequacy, it is an opportunity to grow. Challenges, failures, and setbacks become valuable experiences rather than threats to self-worth. By adopting a growth mindset, you view resistance as an inevitable and beneficial aspect of pursuing meaningful goals. Growth, rather than immediate success, becomes the measure of progress. Another important practice is visualization. Resilient individuals often mentally rehearse challenges, imagining themselves overcoming obstacles, taking deliberate action, and achieving desired outcomes. Visualization strengthens the brain's capacity to act under stress and reduces the fear of uncertainty. When resistance appears, these mental rehearsals create familiarity with discomfort, increasing confidence and readiness. Visualization also reinforces commitment to goals, providing a motivational anchor during moments of hesitation. Accountability enhances resilience. Sharing goals, progress, and struggles with trusted mentors, friends, or colleagues creates external support that reinforces persistence. Accountability reduces the psychological burden of isolation and provides encouragement when resistance feels overwhelming. Knowing that others are observing and supporting your efforts motivates action, sustains momentum, and builds confidence in your ability to navigate obstacles. Resilience is strengthened not only through internal fortitude, but also through strategic social support. Resilience is not only about enduring difficulties, it is about finding meaning in them. Every challenge you face, every moment of resistance you overcome, contributes to personal growth and mastery. By framing resistance as a necessary and valuable part of the journey, you develop purpose-driven resilience. Each obstacle becomes an opportunity to practice courage, creativity, and determination. Over time, these repeated experiences build a sense of agency, empowerment, and self-efficacy that reinforces a resilient mindset. Habits and routines also support resilience. A strong daily structure, consistent practices, and intentional rituals provide stability when resistance arises. When action becomes habitual, it requires less mental energy to push through hesitation. Habits reinforce resilience by embedding proactive behavior into your life, creating momentum that carries you through difficult periods. Over time, small, consistent actions compound into significant progress, strengthening confidence and reinforcing the belief that you can overcome resistance consistently. The resilient mindset is not rigid. Flexibility and adaptability are essential qualities. Resistance often requires adjusting strategies, exploring alternative paths, or reconsidering methods without abandoning goals. Adaptable individuals respond to resistance with creativity rather than frustration. They see multiple routes to success and remain committed to outcomes while adjusting methods as needed. Flexibility transforms obstacles from dead ends into puzzles to solve, maintaining motivation and preserving momentum. Ultimately, cultivating a resilient mindset is a process, not a destination. It requires deliberate practice, self-awareness, and intentional action. Each encounter with resistance provides an opportunity to strengthen resilience, refine strategies, and expand your capacity to thrive under pressure. Resilience is built through repeated engagement with discomfort, reflection, emotional regulation, and purposeful action. It is a skill that compounds over time, transforming challenges from barriers into springboards for growth. In summary, a resilient mindset allows you to face resistance with confidence, persistence, and purpose. It involves reframing challenges as opportunities, embracing discomfort, regulating emotions, reflecting on experience, cultivating a growth mindset, and maintaining habits that support consistent action. Resilience transforms resistance from an obstacle into a signal, pointing you toward growth, mastery, and meaningful achievement. By committing to cultivate resilience, You equip yourself to act decisively, navigate uncertainty, and persist in the pursuit of goals that matter most. A resilient mindset is more than survival, it is empowerment. It is the recognition that discomfort is not the enemy, failure is not the verdict, and resistance is not a stop sign. Each challenge, each hesitation, and each fear becomes an opportunity to strengthen your inner capacity, expand your abilities, and move closer to your highest potential. With resilience, resistance loses its power over you. Instead, it becomes a guide, a teacher, and a pathway to extraordinary growth. Chapter 4: Setting Clear Goals to Combat Resistance. Resistance thrives in the shadows of ambiguity. When your goals are vague, your intentions uncertain, or your priorities unaligned, hesitation finds fertile ground. You may feel stuck, distracted, or overwhelmed, unsure of where to start or which path to take. The human mind resists uncertainty. It craves clarity, structure, and a sense of purpose. This is why setting clear, actionable goals is one of the most powerful strategies for overcoming resistance. Goals illuminate the path forward, provide measurable benchmarks, and create a psychological framework that turns intention into consistent action. At the heart of goal setting is the recognition that clarity reduces mental friction. Resistance often emerges not because a task is inherently difficult, but because the mind perceives the unknown as a threat. When objectives are vague, your brain struggles to estimate effort, anticipate obstacles, or visualize success. This creates hesitation, procrastination, and avoidance. Conversely, a well-defined goal acts like a compass. It guides focus, reduces uncertainty, and signals the mind that the effort is worthwhile. By transforming ambiguity into clarity, you neutralize one of the most fertile breeding grounds of resistance. Effective goal setting begins with alignment. Goals that are incongruent with your values, passions, or long-term vision are inherently weaker and more susceptible to resistance. When a goal feels externally imposed or misaligned with personal meaning, the brain resists action because the effort does not resonate with your intrinsic motivation. Before establishing goals, reflect on your core values and long-term aspirations. Ask yourself, why does this goal matter? How does it connect to who I want to become, or what I want to contribute? When goals are rooted in personal significance, they naturally generate energy, focus, and perseverance. Clarity in goal setting also involves specificity. Broad objectives like, I want to improve my health, or I want to succeed professionally, are vulnerable to resistance because they lack actionable steps. Specific goals such as, I will exercise for 30 minutes 5 days a week, or I will complete a professional certification within 6 months, reduce uncertainty and increase the likelihood of follow-through. Specificity provides a concrete target for action, transforms abstract desires into measurable outcomes, and creates immediate benchmarks for progress. The clearer the goal, the less mental space is available for hesitation to grow. Breaking goals into manageable steps is another key strategy. Large goals can feel overwhelming, triggering resistance even before you begin. The mind interprets daunting tasks as threatening, and avoidance is a natural response. By segmenting a goal into smaller, actionable components, you create a roadmap for progress. Each step becomes an attainable target, and the completion of one task generates momentum for the next. This approach not only reduces resistance, but also cultivates a sense of achievement and confidence at every stage of the journey. Success, even in small increments, reinforces persistence and motivation. Accountability is a critical factor in maintaining momentum. Resistance often flourishes in isolation. When no one else is observing or expecting results, it is easier to justify avoidance or delay. Accountability transforms this dynamic. Sharing your goals with a mentor, colleague, friend, or accountability group increases commitment and reduces the likelihood of giving in to resistance. The knowledge that someone else is aware of your intentions provides motivation, social reinforcement, and external pressure to act consistently. Accountability is not punishment. It is a supportive framework that strengthens perseverance and focus. Visualization is another powerful tool to combat resistance. When you mentally rehearse achieving a goal, you prepare your mind and body for the actions required. Visualization creates a sense of familiarity with success, reduces fear of failure, and strengthens commitment. By imagining the process as well as the outcome, you anticipate challenges, identify potential obstacles, and mentally rehearse strategies to overcome them. Visualization bridges the gap between intention and action, turning abstract goals into vivid, achievable realities in your mind before you take tangible steps. Goal setting also benefits from establishing a timeline. Deadlines create urgency, reduce procrastination, and encourage decisive action. Without temporal boundaries, tasks can stretch indefinitely, allowing resistance to maintain a stronghold. When setting timelines, ensure they are realistic yet challenging enough to foster growth. Deadlines are not intended to create pressure or stress, but to provide a framework that transforms intention into consistent, measurable progress. Time-bound goals generate focus, energy, and accountability, making it harder for resistance to dominate your behavior. Monitoring and reviewing progress is an essential part of goal setting. Resistance is often reinforced when progress is invisible or intangible. By tracking achievements, noting milestones, and reflecting on growth, you create tangible evidence that action produces results. This feedback loop strengthens motivation, builds confidence, and reduces the likelihood of giving in to hesitation. Reflection also allows for course correction, identifying areas where strategies need adjustment or where resistance patterns persist. Tracking progress turns abstract intentions into measurable outcomes, making consistent action more sustainable. Psychologically, breaking goals into micro-actions reduces cognitive load and diminishes fear. The brain responds better to small concrete steps than to large abstract objectives. Micro-goals such as write 200 words today or schedule one networking call this week create immediate opportunities for action. Each completed micro-step provides a sense of accomplishment, reinforces momentum, and gradually weakens the psychological grip of resistance. Over time, these small wins compound, producing significant progress while simultaneously strengthening resilience and confidence. It is also essential to plan for obstacles in advance. Resistance is inevitable, and challenges will arise. Anticipating these moments allows you to develop strategies that maintain progress despite difficulties. Consider potential distractions, emotional dips, or resource limitations and create contingency plans. When resistance appears, having prepared strategies reduces uncertainty, anxiety, and hesitation. This proactive approach transforms resistance from an unpredictable adversary into a challenge you are equipped to navigate. Aligning goals with personal values and long-term vision ensures that motivation is intrinsic rather than extrinsic. When goals are meaningful, resistance loses much of its power. Action becomes an expression of identity, values, and purpose, rather than an obligation or external demand. Reflect on how each goal contributes to the life you aspire to live. This alignment creates natural energy, sustaining commitment through moments of difficulty or hesitation. Goals rooted in values transform resistance from a deterrent into an indicator that you are stepping into meaningful action. Resilience, mindset, and goal setting intersect in powerful ways. The act of setting clear, actionable goals cultivates a proactive approach to resistance, while resilience ensures persistence in the face of obstacles. When combined with clarity, alignment, accountability, and incremental action, Goals become more than targets, they become the framework for a life of intentional progress. Resistance is no longer an insurmountable force, but a measurable, manageable challenge to navigate with focus, courage, and purpose. Another critical element is flexibility. While clarity and specificity are essential, rigid attachment to a particular outcome can itself trigger resistance when circumstances change. Resilient goal setters adapt their approach without abandoning the ultimate objective. Flexibility allows for adjustments, creative problem-solving, and alternative strategies when obstacles arise. This adaptive approach maintains momentum, reinforces confidence, and ensures that resistance does not derail long-term progress. Emotional engagement also enhances the power of goals. When you connect emotionally with the desired outcome, visualizing the satisfaction, pride, and fulfillment of achievement, you create a motivational anchor that strengthens persistence. Emotions act as a bridge between intention and action, fueling energy and commitment when resistance threatens to slow you down. Emotional investment transforms goals from abstract ambitions into experiences that matter deeply, increasing the likelihood of consistent action despite discomfort. The practice of goal review reinforces clarity and alignment. Set aside time regularly to evaluate progress, reflect on lessons learned, and adjust strategies. Review both successes and areas where resistance was strongest. This reflection allows you to identify patterns, refine your approach, and celebrate progress. Regular review turns goal setting into a dynamic, iterative process rather than a static plan, increasing both motivation and adaptability. Resistance becomes an element to manage strategically, rather than a force that dominates action. Finally, cultivating a system for goal achievement integrates clarity, action, and accountability into your daily life. Daily planning, prioritization, and micro-action steps create a rhythm that supports consistent progress. Goals are no longer abstract aspirations, they are woven into your daily routines and habits. This integration reduces resistance by embedding action into predictable, manageable patterns. By creating a structured approach to goal pursuit, you convert intention into tangible results, consistently building momentum and reinforcing the belief that resistance is surmountable. In summary, setting clear goals is a fundamental strategy for combating resistance. Goals reduce ambiguity, provide direction, and create motivation. When aligned with values, broken into manageable steps, supported by accountability, and integrated into daily practice, they provide a framework for consistent action. By anticipating obstacles, maintaining flexibility, and emotionally connecting with outcomes, goals transform resistance from a paralyzing force into a guide for growth and progress. Clear, actionable goals illuminate the path forward, empowering you to push through hesitation, fear, and self-doubt. Resistance thrives in uncertainty, clarity dissolves its power. Goals give you that clarity, direction, and purpose. They transform challenges into actionable steps, obstacles into opportunities, and hesitation into momentum. By mastering the art of goal setting, you equip yourself with one of the most powerful tools for overcoming resistance. Each well-defined, value-aligned goal becomes a stepping stone, guiding you toward achievement, growth, and the life you aspire to create. Chapter 5: Creating Habits that Overcome Resistance. Resistance can feel like an immovable wall, a force that blocks your ambitions, undermines your motivation, and makes even the simplest tasks feel like insurmountable challenges. The truth, however, is that resistance does not need to be confronted solely through brute force or willpower. Willpower alone is limited. It is a finite resource that diminishes with stress, fatigue, or decision overload. The key to consistently overcoming resistance lies in habits. Small, deliberate, daily actions that structure your life, reinforce progress, and make resilience automatic. Habits transform resistance from a psychological struggle into a predictable, manageable challenge, allowing you to act without overthinking or relying solely on motivation. At the heart of habit creation is consistency. When behaviors are repeated over time, they become ingrained in your identity and your routine. Habits reduce cognitive load, meaning the brain no longer needs to weigh every decision, debate every action, or negotiate every choice. You act because the behavior is automatic, not because you are summoning motivation in the moment. This is the power of habits. They create momentum that carries you through moments of resistance, stress, or distraction. They provide structure, predictability, and leverage in the pursuit of long-term goals. The process of building habits begins with awareness. Before you can create actions that overcome resistance, you must understand your current patterns. Observe your daily routines and notice where procrastination, avoidance, or hesitation occur. Which activities do you delay consistently? Which moments feel the heaviest with internal resistance? This awareness allows you to identify key opportunities to introduce new habits that target these areas. Awareness is the foundation of intentional habit creation. Without understanding your patterns, habits risk being random, inconsistent, or ineffective. Next comes clarity in action. A habit must be specific, concrete, and achievable to stick. Ambiguous intentions like exercise more or work smarter invite resistance because the brain cannot easily translate them into action. By contrast, precise behaviors such as walk 15 minutes after breakfast or write 500 words each morning provide clear signals for the brain to act. Specificity removes ambiguity and reduces the psychological friction that fuels hesitation. When habits are concrete, the path to action is illuminated, leaving little room for avoidance. Small wins are powerful motivators in habit formation. Resistance is strongest when goals or actions feel overwhelming. Breaking larger objectives into micro-habits allows you to experience frequent success, reinforcing progress and building confidence. For example, if your goal is to write a book, starting with a daily habit of writing 200 words may seem modest, but it creates a tangible sense of achievement. Over time, these small wins accumulate, producing momentum that diminishes resistance and strengthens belief in your ability to act consistently. Momentum is a force that transforms effort into effortless forward motion. Habit stacking is a particularly effective strategy for overcoming resistance. It involves linking a new habit to an existing routine, creating a chain of actions that are easier to maintain. By leveraging an established behavior as a cue, you reduce the mental energy required to initiate the new habit. For instance, if you already brew coffee every morning, you can stack a habit of reviewing your goals while the coffee brews. Habit stacking creates natural triggers that embed intentional behavior into your existing rhythm, reducing the likelihood that resistance will interrupt your progress. Timing and context play a critical role in habit formation. Your environment and schedule significantly influence your ability to act consistently. Design your space and your day to minimize friction for positive habits and maximize friction for behaviors you wish to reduce. For example, if your goal is to read daily, keep a book on your nightstand or in your workspace. If you want to avoid social media distractions, place your phone in another room during focused work periods. By shaping the physical and temporal context of habits, you reduce the opportunity for resistance to arise. Accountability enhances habit formation. Sharing your intentions with a mentor, friend, or accountability partner creates social reinforcement that strengthens consistency. Knowing someone else is aware of your goals encourages follow-through even when motivation dips. Accountability provides an external reminder and emotional support, making it easier to maintain momentum. Pair accountability with habit tracking, such as a journal, app, or checklist, to create a visible record of progress. Observation of your own success builds confidence and diminishes the power of resistance over time. Habit formation is not immune to setbacks. Resistance will still appear, often in disguised or amplified ways. The difference between those who succeed and those who falter is how they respond to disruption. Resilient habit creators view setbacks as feedback rather than failure. A missed action or a disrupted routine is not a verdict, it is information. Analyze the circumstances, adjust strategies, and recommit. The consistency of effort over time, rather than perfection in the moment, is what builds long-term resilience. Every recommitment strengthens your ability to overcome resistance, reinforcing the notion that persistence is more powerful than flawless execution. Another essential psychological insight is that habits change your identity. When you consistently act in alignment with your goals, the behaviors become a reflection of who you are. Instead of thinking, "I struggle to exercise," you begin to embody the identity, "I am someone who prioritizes my health." Resistance diminishes when action aligns with identity because the mind no longer experiences it as a battle, it becomes an extension of your sense of self. Identity-driven habits create a natural feedback loop where consistent behavior strengthens self-concept, which in turn strengthens consistency. Mindset integration is equally important in habit formation. Habits alone are mechanical, they gain power when paired with the right mindset. Resilient, growth-oriented thinking enhances the ability to act consistently despite discomfort. Remind yourself why the habit matters, visualize the benefits, and frame action as a choice that reinforces your personal values and goals. Mindset provides the emotional and motivational context that transforms repetition into meaning. Without this integration, habits risk becoming rote and uninspired, making them more susceptible to disruption. Progressive habit building is another crucial principle. Begin with small, achievable behaviors, and gradually increase intensity, duration, or complexity. Resistance is often strongest when the brain perceives a leap that exceeds current capacity. Incremental growth creates a manageable challenge while continuously expanding your capability. For example, if your goal is to meditate, start with 3 minutes daily and gradually increase to 10, 20, or 30 minutes. Incremental progress reinforces confidence, strengthens neural pathways, and habituates the mind to consistent action. The compounding effect of habits cannot be overstated. Each consistent action, no matter how small, produces cumulative benefits over time. Just as financial compounding grows wealth gradually into significant outcomes, habit compounding builds mastery, resilience, and momentum. Resistance loses its grip as repeated behaviors become automatic, producing results that reinforce further action. This compounding effect is why small, deliberate habits often surpass sporadic bursts of high-intensity effort in producing meaningful, long-term progress. Habits also allow you to conserve mental energy for high-value decisions. When certain behaviors are automatic, the brain reserves cognitive resources for more complex tasks, strategic thinking, and creative problem-solving. Resistance often arises when mental energy is depleted. By automating foundational actions through habits, you create psychological space for tackling challenges that require focus, problem-solving, or courage. Habits act as scaffolding, supporting your larger goals by minimizing the mental friction that resistance exploits. Consistency requires routine and ritual. Habits thrive in predictable patterns. Establishing fixed times, triggers, and sequences reinforces automaticity. Morning routines, evening wind-down rituals, and structured work periods create predictable environments in which action becomes the default response. Rituals anchor behavior, reduce decision fatigue, and create momentum that makes resistance less likely to interfere with progress. When habits are embedded in consistent routines, action becomes nearly inevitable. Reward systems reinforce habit persistence. The brain responds to feedback, pleasure, and reinforcement. Celebrate milestones, acknowledge small wins, and create tangible or symbolic rewards for consistent behavior. Rewards do not need to be extravagant. Their purpose is to signal to your brain that consistent effort produces positive outcomes. Reinforcement strengthens habit formation and encourages repetition, gradually overriding the instinct to avoid discomfort or delay action. Finally, habits cultivate self-trust and confidence. Each action you take consistently builds evidence that you can act despite hesitation, fear, or uncertainty. Resistance loses its psychological power as repeated success proves that you are capable, disciplined, and persistent. Habits are the bridge between intention and action, transforming abstract goals into tangible, sustainable progress. Over time, the daily practice of habit-based action reshapes your life, your identity, and your capacity to overcome resistance without relying solely on fleeting motivation. In summary, creating habits is one of the most effective ways to overcome resistance. Habits reduce reliance on willpower, minimize cognitive friction, and transform consistent action into automatic behavior. By cultivating awareness, specificity, small wins, habit stacking, accountability, emotional engagement, and identity alignment, you build a foundation for progress that persists despite discomfort or hesitation. Habits create momentum, reinforce confidence, and allow resilience to flourish, turning resistance from an immovable barrier into a manageable, even predictable challenge. Daily habits are the engine that propels you forward. They convert intention into action, hesitation into momentum, and resistance into opportunity. By designing habits intentionally, you equip yourself with a framework that supports continuous growth, consistent progress, and unwavering commitment to your goals. The small actions you take each day accumulate into extraordinary results, transforming resistance from a force that blocks you into a guide that shapes your most meaningful achievements. Chapter 6: Harnessing Motivation and Energy. Motivation and energy are the fuel that powers action, especially when resistance appears at its most formidable. Resistance often feels like an invisible weight pressing down on your intentions, draining enthusiasm, and tempting you to delay, avoid, or abandon meaningful action. The truth is that motivation is not a magical spark that comes and goes randomly. It is a resource that can be cultivated, managed, and amplified through deliberate strategies. Similarly, energy, the physical, emotional, and mental vitality that enables focus and perseverance, can be nurtured, optimized, and aligned with your goals. Harnessing both motivation and energy is critical to sustaining consistent progress, overcoming resistance, and achieving personal and professional growth. At its essence, motivation is the bridge between desire and action. It is the internal drive that compels you to move despite discomfort, fear, or hesitation. Motivation is strongest when it is connected to purpose, when the reason for action resonates deeply with your values, aspirations, or sense of identity. Conversely, motivation falters when goals feel meaningless, imposed, or disconnected from what you truly care about. To sustain motivation, you must anchor your actions in personal significance. Ask yourself, why does this matter? How does this action align with the life I want to live? When motivation is tied to intrinsic purpose rather than external pressure, it becomes resilient and self-reinforcing. Visualization is a powerful tool to amplify motivation. By vividly imagining the outcomes of your efforts, you create a compelling mental picture that your brain interprets as attainable. Visualization works on multiple levels. It strengthens focus, primes the mind for action, and creates emotional engagement with the goal. When resistance arises, your mental rehearsal serves as a motivational anchor, reminding you of the rewards of persistence. For example, an athlete visualizes the finish line, a speaker imagines delivering a compelling presentation, and a writer envisions the impact of their words on readers. Visualization makes abstract ambition tangible, fueling the energy required to act. Affirmations also play a critical role in sustaining motivation. Positive statements about your abilities, values, and potential rewire the mind to focus on possibility rather than limitation. When repeated consistently, affirmations strengthen self-efficacy, reduce self-doubt, and reinforce the belief that you are capable of overcoming resistance. The power of affirmations lies not in denying difficulty, but in cultivating confidence and persistence. For instance, statements such as, "I am capable of taking consistent action," or "Every step I take brings me closer to my goal," remind you that effort matters and that resistance is a sign you are progressing toward meaningful outcomes. Time management is an essential factor in maintaining motivation and energy. Resistance often escalates when tasks feel overwhelming, deadlines are unclear, or priorities compete for attention. Structuring your day with deliberate planning, prioritization, and energy management creates a framework that reduces friction and maximizes productivity. Begin by identifying high-value tasks that align with your goals and values. Schedule these tasks during periods of peak energy, when focus and vitality are highest. By aligning effort with energy, you reduce the perception of difficulty, making action more natural and sustaining motivation over longer periods. Intrinsic motivation, the internal desire to act for personal satisfaction, growth, or purpose, is more powerful than extrinsic motivators like rewards, praise, or external pressure. Resistance diminishes when you act from intrinsic motivation, because the action itself carries meaning. To cultivate intrinsic motivation, connect each task with a personal value, sense of accomplishment, or meaningful impact. Ask yourself, how will this action contribute to my growth, help others, or reflect my values? When intrinsic motivation is strong, even mundane or challenging tasks can become energizing and fulfilling. The key is not to wait for excitement, but to generate it through connection with purpose. Energy management extends beyond psychological strategies into the physical realm. Your body provides the fuel for action, and depletion of physical energy exacerbates resistance. Sleep, nutrition, movement, and hydration directly influence focus, resilience, and motivation. Consistent sleep patterns, balanced meals, and regular exercise are not optional for sustained energy, they are essential. Even short periods of physical movement, deep breathing, or stretching can recharge energy levels, increasing the capacity to act despite resistance. Recognizing the interdependence of physical vitality and mental motivation is critical for consistent performance and resilience. Another strategy is momentum building. Motivation is often easier to maintain when you create a rhythm of small, consistent actions. Each completed task generates psychological momentum, making the next action feel less daunting. When resistance arises, momentum acts as a force that carries you forward. Start with manageable actions, even when energy feels low, and allow the accumulation of effort to fuel subsequent tasks. The compounding effect of momentum transforms small steps into sustained progress, weakening the hold of resistance over time. Structuring challenges to match your energy levels is another powerful approach. Humans have natural fluctuations in focus, vitality, and emotional strength throughout the day. Identify your peak energy periods and schedule tasks that require maximal cognitive or emotional effort during these times. Reserve less demanding tasks for periods of lower energy. Aligning action with natural rhythms reduces the perception of difficulty, increases efficiency, and sustains motivation. Resistance loses its impact when action is congruent with your inherent capacity for focus and energy. Psychological reframing can also amplify energy and motivation. Resistance often appears larger than it is because the brain magnifies risk and discomfort. By consciously reframing resistance as a signal of growth and opportunity, rather than a threat, you reduce fear and hesitation. Challenges are transformed into meaningful tests of skill, persistence, and courage. Every obstacle you face becomes a chance to learn, adapt, and expand your capacity. This mental shift increases engagement, fosters excitement, and sustains the energy required to act consistently. Setting milestones and celebrating progress is essential for maintaining motivation over time. Resistance often arises when progress feels invisible or intangible. By identifying short-term goals and acknowledging achievements along the way, you create a continuous feedback loop that reinforces effort. Celebrations do not need to be extravagant. Recognition of small accomplishments creates positive reinforcement that strengthens commitment and sustains energy. These incremental celebrations provide psychological fuel that helps you continue pushing through difficult moments. Environmental cues also influence motivation. Surroundings can either amplify focus and energy or sap it. Creating an environment that supports action, organized, inspiring, and free of unnecessary distractions, reduces resistance and fosters sustained effort. This includes both physical spaces, such as tidy workstations or designated areas for productive activity, and social environments, such as communities or teams that encourage accountability and positive reinforcement. By curating your environment, you create external structures that support internal motivation and energy. Another critical factor is self-talk. The narratives you tell yourself about challenges, capability, and effort shape your experience of resistance. Negative self-talk magnifies difficulty and undermines energy. Positive, solution-oriented self-talk reinforces resilience, confidence, and motivation. Statements such as, "I have overcome challenges before and can do it again," or "every small action I take compounds into progress," foster a sense of agency and capability. Mastering internal dialogue transforms hesitation into action and doubt into focus, sustaining both energy and motivation. Discipline and habit integration further reinforce motivation. Motivation alone is fleeting, energy can fluctuate. Habits create consistency, ensuring that action occurs even when motivation wanes. Pair motivation strategies with habitual behaviors, morning routines, micro-actions, and structured daily practices to sustain progress. When behaviors are habitual, they require less conscious effort, reducing reliance on fluctuating motivation and strengthening resilience against resistance. The interplay of habits, motivation, and energy creates a robust framework for consistent action. Stress management is also essential for sustaining motivation. Resistance often feels stronger when stress levels are high because mental and emotional energy is depleted. Incorporating stress reduction techniques, meditation, breathing exercises, time in nature, or relaxation practices preserves energy, sharpens focus, and enhances mental clarity. Managing stress ensures that motivation is not undermined by emotional fatigue, and that energy reserves are available to confront resistance effectively. Visualization, affirmations, momentum, environmental design, intrinsic purpose, habits, and energy management work synergistically. Motivation is not a singular force but a dynamic system that integrates mind, body, and environment. By intentionally cultivating each component, you create an ecosystem in which resistance is less likely to dominate behavior. Action becomes easier, persistence becomes natural, and progress becomes inevitable. Motivation is no longer something to wait for. It is something you generate, sustain, and harness to overcome resistance consistently. Finally, energy and motivation are strengthened by reflection and gratitude. Recognizing the progress you have made, the skills you have developed, and the lessons learned from overcoming resistance reinforces self-efficacy and fuels continued effort. Gratitude for your capacity, your opportunities, and your growth provides emotional energy that amplifies motivation. Reflection transforms resistance into a teacher, setbacks into data, and challenges into sources of insight, sustaining the vitality required for consistent action. In summary, harnessing motivation and energy is a multifaceted process. Motivation is strengthened by purpose, visualization, intrinsic value, and milestone recognition. Energy is nurtured through physical care, stress management, alignment with natural rhythms, and habit integration. Momentum, environmental design, self-talk, and reflective practice further reinforce consistent action. When motivation and energy are intentionally cultivated, resistance loses its dominance. Even when obstacles appear, action continues, persistence strengthens, and goals move closer to fruition. Motivation and energy are not passive states. They are cultivated resources that you can master to consistently push through resistance. By integrating strategies for intrinsic motivation, energy optimization, habit alignment, and psychological resilience, you create a sustainable framework for action. Resistance becomes less daunting, tasks become more engaging, and progress becomes inevitable. Motivation and energy are no longer fleeting resources. They become enduring allies, guiding you through discomfort, hesitation, and challenge. The daily practice of harnessing these forces transforms resistance from a barrier into a catalyst, enabling you to move consistently toward the life and goals you aspire to achieve. Chapter 7: Using Accountability and Support Systems. Resistance is not always an internal battle fought alone. While willpower, habits, and mindset are essential tools in overcoming hesitation and procrastination, external support can dramatically increase your capacity to act consistently. Accountability and support systems provide structure, reinforcement, and social motivation that amplify your internal efforts, making the challenge of resistance more manageable. When we attempt to push through obstacles alone, we often succumb to doubt, fatigue, or distraction. When we leverage relationships, mentorship, and community, we create an ecosystem of encouragement that transforms resistance from a formidable barrier into a surmountable challenge. At its core, accountability is the conscious act of making your goals, intentions, and progress visible to others. This visibility creates a sense of responsibility that motivates action. When someone else knows what you intend to achieve, procrastination becomes more difficult to justify, hesitation feels more costly, and effort gains an added dimension of significance. Accountability transforms internal intention into social commitment. It connects your personal goals to relational dynamics, which increases both motivation and follow-through. Knowing that someone else is observing, supporting, or expecting results encourages consistency and helps you navigate moments when resistance would otherwise halt action. Support systems extend beyond accountability. They encompass mentorship, peer networks, and communities that share values, goals, or challenges. Humans are social beings, and we thrive in environments where encouragement, shared experiences, and collective energy are present. Mentors provide guidance, perspective, and wisdom gained through experience, reducing the friction of trial and error learning. Peers offer companionship, empathy, and shared accountability, creating a sense of solidarity in the pursuit of growth. Communities foster a culture of persistence, where resistance is normalized and success becomes both aspirational and attainable. These external connections provide psychological scaffolding that reinforces resilience and fuels motivation. Building an accountability network begins with clarity. Identify the goals or behaviors where you face the most resistance and where external observation or encouragement would be most beneficial. Be explicit about what you hope to achieve and the type of support you need. Accountability is most effective when it is precise, structured, and consistent. Simply telling someone, "I want to work harder," is too vague to generate action. Instead, specifying, "I will write for 30 minutes every morning, and I will report my progress to you each evening," creates concrete expectations that reduce ambiguity and strengthen follow-through. Regular check-ins are a cornerstone of accountability. These meetings or touchpoints provide structured opportunities to report progress, reflect on challenges, and reinforce commitment. The frequency of check-ins should align with the intensity of the goal and the level of resistance encountered. Daily, weekly, or bi-weekly touchpoints provide rhythm and consistency. What matters most is that the interaction is predictable and meaningful. These sessions do not need to be formal. They can be casual conversations, shared updates, or even brief messages, but they must provide a reliable mechanism for accountability to take effect. Mentorship plays a uniquely powerful role in overcoming resistance. A mentor offers not only guidance, but also perspective on challenges that may seem insurmountable. They help reframe setbacks as opportunities, illuminate blind spots, and share strategies for navigating obstacles. When resistance feels overwhelming, a mentor provides reassurance that persistence is possible, modeling resilience and demonstrating that challenges are part of the growth process. Mentorship bridges the gap between aspiration and action, making the path forward clearer, less intimidating, and more achievable. Peer accountability adds a dynamic element to progress. Sharing goals and efforts with peers who are pursuing similar objectives creates a mutual reinforcement loop. Observing others' successes motivates action, while sharing your own progress reinforces commitment. Peer support normalizes challenges, reduces feelings of isolation, and creates a culture of persistence. In group settings, resistance loses its intimidating power because individuals collectively normalize struggle as part of the journey toward meaningful outcomes. Collaboration, shared encouragement, and friendly competition can all enhance consistency and reduce procrastination. Community engagement expands accountability into a broader ecosystem. Participating in groups, networks, or online communities that align with your goals introduces multiple layers of reinforcement. In such communities, success is celebrated, setbacks are normalized, and collective wisdom is available to guide action. Community involvement also fosters inspiration. Seeing others navigate resistance, achieve milestones, and persevere creates a psychological template for what is possible. The shared energy and collective momentum of a supportive community amplify your own motivation and fortify your resolve. Transparency is crucial in accountability. Resistance often thrives when intentions are hidden, struggles are unacknowledged, or progress is obscured. By openly sharing your goals, challenges, and outcomes, you invite others to support, guide, and encourage you. Transparency builds trust, deepens relationships, and provides social reinforcement that strengthens commitment. It also reduces self-deception. When your intentions are visible, it is harder to rationalize avoidance or procrastination. Social visibility becomes a powerful tool to combat internal resistance. Feedback is a critical component of support systems. Accountability is not merely about reporting actions. It is about receiving constructive insights that inform your process. Feedback illuminates areas where resistance is most potent, identifies patterns of behavior, and provides strategies for adjustment. It offers perspective that you may overlook when navigating challenges alone. Constructive feedback empowers you to refine your approach, maintain momentum, and sustain motivation in the face of obstacles. It transforms accountability into a dynamic, interactive, and growth-oriented experience. Goal sharing amplifies psychological commitment. Publicly declaring your goals, whether to a mentor, peer, or community, increases the perceived cost of failure, which in turn strengthens follow-through. This is not about shame or external pressure, it is about commitment reinforcement. When goals are acknowledged by others, your brain interprets the action as significant, increasing the energy and focus directed toward achievement. The social dimension of commitment makes resistance less likely to dominate behavior because inaction carries relational and psychological consequences. Support systems also provide emotional reinforcement. Resistance often emerges from internal doubt, fear, or fatigue. Encouragement from mentors, peers, or communities counteracts these forces, offering reassurance and emotional strength. When you face setbacks or challenging moments, external support serves as a stabilizing force, reminding you of your capabilities, progress, and purpose. Emotional reinforcement reduces the psychological weight of resistance, allowing you to act with confidence and persistence even in difficult circumstances. Consistency in support systems is essential. Sporadic or intermittent accountability has limited impact because resistance exploits gaps in attention, focus, or engagement. Commit to regular interactions, reporting, and check-ins. Treat your support systems as integral components of your personal growth infrastructure, rather than optional or secondary elements. Consistent engagement reinforces momentum, builds trust, and strengthens the psychological habit of persistence, making resistance less intimidating and easier to overcome. Accountability also encourages self-reflection. Reporting progress to others naturally prompts evaluation of habits, strategies, and mindset. By articulating your actions, challenges, and results, you cultivate self-awareness, a critical tool for identifying resistance patterns and adjusting approaches. Reflection transforms external accountability into internal insight, allowing you to internalize lessons, refine strategies, and increase resilience. Self-awareness combined with external support forms a powerful feedback loop for growth and consistent action. Collaboration enhances problem-solving and creativity. Resistance often appears when a path forward is unclear or obstacles seem insurmountable. Engaging with mentors, peers, or communities exposes you to new perspectives, strategies, and solutions. Collaboration allows you to leverage collective intelligence, reducing the burden of individual struggle and providing actionable insights for overcoming resistance. Working with others not only supports persistence, but also expands the range of possibilities for action and success. Mentors and support networks can model resilience, demonstrating how to approach challenges with persistence, adaptability, and purpose. Observing others' strategies in navigating resistance provides templates for your own action. Role modeling is a subtle yet powerful aspect of support systems. It shows that resistance is normal, conquerable, and even instructive. Seeing examples of others moving through difficulty reinforces belief in your own capacity to act consistently, despite obstacles. Accountability and support systems work best when tailored to your personality, goals, and needs. Some thrive with close one-on-one mentorship, while others excel in peer groups or online communities. Some prefer structured check-ins, others benefit from informal updates. Understanding your own preferences, strengths, and vulnerabilities allows you to design support systems that maximize engagement, motivation, and effectiveness. The right structure reduces friction and amplifies your capacity to sustain effort in the face of resistance. In essence, resistance is not a solitary struggle. It is one that can be mitigated, managed, and often transformed through social support. Accountability, mentorship, peer networks, and communities provide psychological scaffolding, motivation, and reinforcement that amplify your own internal efforts. They create structures for consistency, offer perspective in challenging moments, and normalize persistence in the face of difficulty. No matter how strong your internal drive, external support systems significantly enhance your capacity to act, maintain focus, and overcome hesitation. By intentionally building accountability networks and engaging supportive communities, you create a safety net and a launchpad simultaneously. Resistance becomes less daunting because you are not navigating it alone. Mentors guide, peers encourage, and communities reinforce the belief that persistence is possible. External support systems are not a crutch. They are a strategic tool for maximizing motivation, energy, and consistency. They allow you to push through hesitation, maintain momentum, and achieve goals that might otherwise feel unreachable. In summary, using accountability and support systems transforms the battle with resistance. Social commitment, mentorship, peer collaboration, community engagement, feedback, and emotional reinforcement strengthen persistence, amplify motivation, and provide practical solutions to obstacles. Resistance is no longer an isolated struggle, but a challenge that can be navigated with strategy, connection, and shared energy. By leveraging relationships and external support, you create a robust framework for consistent action, enabling you to turn hesitation into achievement, struggle into momentum, and intention into reality. Chapter 8: Pushing Through Fear and Self-Doubt. Fear and self-doubt are universal human experiences. They are the invisible chains that quietly hold people back from pursuing their goals, taking bold steps, or acting on their potential. Resistance often hides beneath these two forces, disguised as hesitation, procrastination, perfectionism, or rationalization. While resistance can feel external, a heavy workload, competing responsibilities, or environmental obstacles, its true power frequently stems from internal sources. Fear convinces us that failure is catastrophic, while self-doubt whispers that we are incapable, unworthy, or unprepared. To push through resistance effectively, we must confront these internal adversaries head-on, transforming them from paralyzing forces into manageable signals of growth. Fear is a natural response to uncertainty. It is the body and mind's mechanism for alerting us to potential danger, but it is often misapplied to modern challenges that are not life-threatening. Starting a new project, pursuing a dream, or voicing an unpopular opinion can trigger the same physiological and psychological responses as facing actual danger. The heart races, thoughts spiral, and a sense of paralysis sets in. Fear, however, is not inherently negative. It is a signal, a marker of significance. Where fear is strongest, growth is often most potent. By acknowledging fear rather than avoiding it, you gain awareness of the areas in which you are stretching beyond comfort, opening the door to courage and development. Self-doubt is the internal dialogue that undermines confidence and amplifies resistance. It manifests as thoughts such as, "I'm not ready, I'll fail," or "I don't deserve this." While fear alerts you to risk, self-doubt convinces you to stop before you even begin. It erodes initiative and slows momentum, making even small tasks feel daunting. Overcoming self-doubt requires both awareness and action. Awareness allows you to recognize these thoughts without giving them authority. Action, especially repeated incremental action, demonstrates to your mind that you are capable despite uncertainty, gradually reducing the influence of self-doubt over time. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is action in spite of it. The most effective way to push through fear and self-doubt is not to wait until they vanish, but to act while feeling them. Courage is built incrementally, like a muscle that strengthens through repeated use. Each step taken in the face of fear, no matter how small, sends a message to your brain and body: resistance can be faced and overcome. Over time, what once seemed impossible becomes manageable, and fear's intensity diminishes as confidence grows. One powerful strategy is to reframe fear and self-doubt as allies rather than enemies. Fear is a compass pointing toward areas of potential growth. Self-doubt highlights the beliefs and skills that require reinforcement. Instead of interpreting fear as a stop signal, view it as a marker of significance and opportunity. Ask yourself, what am I avoiding because it matters? Where can I stretch beyond comfort to grow? This shift in perspective transforms fear into a motivational guide rather than a paralyzing force. Incremental exposure is another highly effective technique. Taking small, deliberate steps toward what scares you gradually desensitizes your mind and reduces the intensity of fear. If public speaking triggers self-doubt, begin by speaking in front of a trusted friend, then a small group, then a larger audience. Each successful attempt builds confidence, demonstrating that fear is manageable and often less threatening than imagined. Incremental exposure allows action to occur before courage reaches an idealized threshold, reinforcing resilience through practice. Visualization can also be a potent tool for combating fear. By mentally rehearsing success, you create a cognitive template that reduces uncertainty and increases confidence. Picture yourself navigating the challenging situation with composure, skill, and resilience. Engage all your senses in the visualization. Hear the sounds, feel the sensations, and notice the reactions. This mental preparation primes your nervous system for action, reducing hesitation and increasing the likelihood of persistent engagement despite internal resistance. Affirmations reinforce courage and diminish self-doubt. Consistent, positive self-statements counteract the negative internal dialogue that feeds hesitation. Affirmations such as, "I am capable of handling challenges," "I trust my judgment and abilities," or "Every step I take strengthens my confidence," create a mental environment conducive to action. They do not remove fear or uncertainty but provide a foundation of self-trust from which courageous action can emerge. Reflection and journaling are additional strategies for managing fear and self-doubt. Writing about what scares you, why you feel uncertain, and what evidence supports or contradicts those beliefs creates clarity. Reflection externalizes the internal dialogue, allowing you to analyze it objectively rather than being overwhelmed by it. Through journaling, you begin to separate rational concerns from irrational self-criticism, providing insight into patterns of resistance and opening pathways for intentional action. Action planning is essential when fear and self-doubt are strong. Resistance often thrives in ambiguity. When steps are unclear, tasks feel monumental and the mind spirals into avoidance. Breaking down challenges into specific, manageable actions reduces psychological friction and makes it easier to act despite fear. Even when doubt lingers, taking one concrete step builds momentum. Momentum becomes a force multiplier. As progress accumulates, confidence grows, and fear loses its ability to dominate decision-making. Another critical principle is embracing imperfection. Fear and self-doubt are magnified when we expect flawless execution. Perfectionism traps you in a cycle of procrastination and hesitation. Recognize that action, learning, and progress are more important than perfection. Each attempt, even if imperfect, provides experience, feedback, and growth. The pursuit of excellence should not paralyze action. Instead, it should guide iterative improvement. Accepting imperfection frees you to act despite fear and builds resilience through experience. Support systems play a crucial role in navigating fear and self-doubt. Mentors, peers, and communities can provide encouragement, perspective, and guidance when internal resistance peaks. Sharing fears openly with trusted individuals normalizes the experience, reduces isolation, and creates external reinforcement for courage. Others' experiences and strategies can illuminate paths through obstacles, demonstrating that fear is surmountable and self-doubt is not a definitive judgment. Social support amplifies both motivation and confidence. Mindset shifts are fundamental. Viewing mistakes as feedback rather than failure, setbacks as opportunities rather than threats, and challenges as invitations to grow rather than dangers to avoid transforms the experience of fear. Growth-oriented thinking creates a mental environment in which action is prioritized over hesitation. By interpreting resistance as a signal for learning and expansion, you neutralize much of its paralyzing power. Courage flourishes when fear is framed as a meaningful teacher rather than a prohibitive barrier. Physical techniques can also mitigate the effects of fear. Deep breathing, posture adjustment, and focused movement regulate physiological responses to anxiety and tension. When fear triggers racing heartbeats, shallow breathing, or muscular tightness, intentional control of these responses sends signals to the brain that you are capable of managing stress. Physical regulation complements mental strategies, creating an integrated approach to confronting resistance. Incremental goal setting is another method for building courage. Large objectives often feel overwhelming, feeding fear and doubt. Breaking them into smaller, achievable milestones allows you to experience frequent success and reinforces the belief that progress is possible. Each completed milestone provides evidence of capability, reduces psychological barriers, and strengthens momentum. Progress, even in small increments, gradually diminishes the influence of fear and self-doubt over time. Self-compassion is essential when confronting internal resistance. Fear and self-doubt are universal, they are not reflections of inadequacy. Treat yourself with understanding and patience as you navigate challenging tasks. Compassion reduces the emotional weight of resistance, prevents the spiral of self-criticism, and allows you to act from a place of encouragement rather than judgment. Self-compassion builds resilience by reinforcing the belief that you are capable of facing challenges, learning from mistakes, and persisting through difficulty. Visualization of long-term consequences can also motivate action. Consider the impact of inaction and the opportunities lost when fear dominates decisions. Recognizing the cost of resistance provides a sense of urgency and reinforces commitment. Action becomes not only a choice, but a necessity for personal growth, fulfillment, and the achievement of meaningful goals. By focusing on potential rewards, growth, and long-term outcomes, fear shifts from a paralyzing force into a signal that meaningful action is required. Finally, courage compounds. Each time you act in the presence of fear, you reinforce your ability to face future challenges. Successes, even small, create evidence that you are capable. Over time, fear and self-doubt lose their intensity and action becomes increasingly natural. Courage becomes self-reinforcing. The more you practice, the stronger your confidence, resilience, and persistence become. Resistance, once a formidable adversary, becomes an obstacle you can navigate, learn from, and ultimately diminish in influence. In summary, pushing through fear and self-doubt requires awareness, mindset shifts, incremental action, support systems, and reflection. Fear is a signal of growth. Self-doubt highlights areas for development. By acting despite uncertainty, reframing challenges, leveraging mentors and peers, and cultivating courage incrementally, resistance loses its dominance. The integration of mental, emotional, and physical strategies allows you to move consistently toward meaningful goals, transforming hesitation into action, anxiety into motivation, and doubt into confidence. Fear and self-doubt will never vanish entirely. They are natural companions in any meaningful endeavor. But when faced with deliberate strategies, consistent practice and courageous action, they lose their ability to dictate your choices. You become the master of your response, the architect of your progress, and the driver of your potential. Through this process, resistance is no longer a stop sign. It is a marker that you are on the path of growth, courage, and accomplishment. Chapter 9: Turning Resistance into Growth Opportunities. Resistance is often perceived as a roadblock, a force that must be battled, avoided, or endured. Yet in truth, resistance is one of life's most effective teachers. It signals where growth is possible, where comfort zones end, and where your capacity for courage, discipline, and resilience is waiting to be expanded. Every challenge, hesitation, or internal conflict is not merely an obstacle, it is an invitation to learn, adapt, and transform. Learning to see resistance as a pathway rather than a barrier fundamentally changes how you approach goals, setbacks, and personal development. Once this perspective is adopted, the energy that once fueled frustration or avoidance can be redirected into growth, mastery, and meaningful achievement. The first step in transforming resistance into growth is recognition. You must identify when resistance appears, both externally and internally. Resistance can manifest as procrastination, distraction, self-doubt, fear, or rationalization. External resistance may take the form of unexpected obstacles, competing priorities, or unsupportive environments. Internal resistance, however, is often more subtle but equally powerful. It is the voice that questions your capability, undermines your confidence, or magnifies discomfort. Awareness of these patterns is critical. By acknowledging resistance without judgment, you position yourself to respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. Once recognized, resistance becomes a diagnostic tool. It reveals areas where skills need development, habits require strengthening, or mindset shifts are necessary. For example, if you find yourself repeatedly avoiding a particular task, ask why. Is it due to a lack of knowledge, fear of judgment, or insufficient planning? Resistance highlights gaps in preparation, confidence, or strategy, giving you actionable insights into where personal growth is needed. Each encounter with resistance is data, a chance to understand your tendencies, confront limitations, and make deliberate adjustments. Framing resistance as feedback rather than failure is essential. Many people interpret challenges as signs of inadequacy, responding with frustration, self-criticism, or surrender. This perspective amplifies resistance and stifles progress. Instead, view resistance as information. It tells you where effort, learning, or adaptation is required. For instance, difficulty completing a project may reveal a need for better time management or skill development. Facing a fear of public speaking may indicate an opportunity to strengthen communication skills or build confidence. Every obstacle carries a lesson. Recognizing it is the key to transformation. Reflection is a critical tool in turning resistance into growth. After encountering a challenge, take time to analyze the experience. What triggered resistance? How did you respond? What did you learn about yourself, your habits, or your mindset? Journaling or structured reflection provides clarity and allows insights to become actionable. Reflection not only consolidates learning, but also reinforces resilience. Over time, it creates a repository of personal strategies, illustrating how persistence and adaptation lead to tangible progress. Growth emerges most profoundly when resistance is met with intentional action. Avoidance reinforces limitation, engagement fosters development. When you act in spite of resistance, you practice resilience, cultivate problem-solving skills, and strengthen self-efficacy. Each action taken despite hesitation sends a message to your mind and body that you are capable of navigating difficulty. Over time, repeated engagement with resistance builds confidence, making future obstacles easier to confront and reducing the paralyzing power of fear and self-doubt. Another key principle is incremental mastery. Resistance often feels overwhelming when challenges are approached as monolithic or insurmountable. Breaking tasks into smaller, manageable steps allows action to occur within achievable parameters. Each small step completed in the presence of resistance builds skill, reinforces persistence, and strengthens confidence. Incremental mastery transforms daunting obstacles into a series of learnable, conquerable challenges, turning each encounter into an opportunity for measurable growth. Reframing setbacks is central to this process. Resistance frequently leads to temporary failure or unexpected outcomes. Traditional thinking may label these moments as defeat. However, when approached with a growth mindset, setbacks are reframed as experiments, trials, and opportunities for insight. Mistakes reveal areas for improvement, highlight gaps in strategy, and provide lessons that are often more valuable than immediate success. The most resilient individuals view failure not as a stopping point, but as a critical step in the iterative process of growth. Self-awareness deepens as resistance is confronted. Every obstacle tests not only skills and knowledge, but also patience, emotional regulation, and commitment. By observing your reactions to resistance, you learn how fear, self-doubt, and procrastination manifest in your life. This heightened self-awareness allows you to anticipate challenges, design strategies to overcome them, and make intentional adjustments to habits, mindset, or environment. Resistance becomes a mirror, reflecting both strengths to leverage and weaknesses to address. The process of learning from resistance is cumulative. Each challenge faced, each moment of hesitation overcome, and each small success in the presence of difficulty contributes to a growing sense of competence and confidence. Over time, you develop a resilience framework, a collection of strategies, experiences, and insights that equip you to handle increasing levels of complexity, uncertainty, and challenge. Resistance ceases to be a purely negative force. It becomes the fuel for a trajectory of continuous growth. Accountability and support networks enhance the process of turning resistance into growth. Sharing challenges with mentors, peers, or supportive communities provides perspective, feedback, and encouragement. Others can help identify patterns, suggest alternative approaches, and offer motivation when internal energy wanes. Collaborative engagement with resistance not only reinforces persistence, but also enriches learning, demonstrating that growth is both an individual and relational process. Resistance is easier to navigate and more instructive when experienced within a network of support and shared insight. Resilience is developed through repeated exposure to resistance. Each encounter strengthens the mental, emotional, and strategic capacity to respond effectively. The key is not to avoid discomfort, but to engage with it deliberately. Gradual exposure to challenging situations, such as taking on increasingly complex projects, confronting difficult conversations, or stepping outside comfort zones, builds a robust foundation of capability. Over time, resistance that once seemed insurmountable becomes manageable, and confidence becomes self-reinforcing. Learning to track progress and lessons enhances the growth potential of resistance. Maintaining a record of challenges faced, actions taken, and outcomes achieved creates a tangible measure of development. Documenting what worked, what didn't, and the insights gained allows reflection to inform future action. This practice turns resistance into a structured source of knowledge, enabling continuous improvement and reinforcing the perception that obstacles are valuable rather than discouraging. Resistance also cultivates patience and persistence. Growth is rarely instantaneous. Challenges often require sustained effort, iterative learning, and adaptation. By approaching resistance as a teacher, you develop the patience to engage consistently, the persistence to continue despite setbacks, and the fortitude to view struggle as integral to achievement. Resistance becomes a catalyst for cultivating long-term discipline and the perseverance necessary for meaningful success. Mindset transformation is central to this chapter. Shifting from seeing resistance as an enemy to recognizing it as a guide alters your experience of challenge. Resistance is no longer something to avoid or resent, but something to engage with, learn from, and leverage. Each obstacle is an opportunity to refine skills, strengthen character, and deepen self-awareness. Over time, this mindset shift reduces fear, diminishes procrastination, and fosters a proactive orientation toward life's challenges. Courage compounds when resistance is reframed. Each time you engage with a challenge, take action despite hesitation, and extract lessons from obstacles, you build a psychological template for future success. Fear and self-doubt become indicators of opportunity rather than prohibitions, and each conquered resistance reinforces your belief in your capacity to act. This compounding effect turns ordinary challenges into extraordinary growth experiences, shaping both your skill set and your inner resilience. Finally, turning resistance into growth requires a deliberate practice of gratitude and reflection. Appreciate the lessons that challenges provide, the skills you develop, and the strength you cultivate through persistence. Reflect on past moments when resistance led to unexpected growth, and use those experiences as motivation to engage with current and future challenges. By combining reflection, gratitude, and action, you transform resistance from a source of frustration into a catalyst for mastery, confidence, and personal evolution. In summary, resistance is not a barrier to avoid but a teacher to embrace. Awareness, reflection, incremental action, support systems, and mindset shifts convert hesitation, fear, and self-doubt into opportunities for skill development, resilience, and self-knowledge. Each obstacle navigated strengthens capacity, builds confidence, and reinforces the ability to engage with future challenges. By seeing resistance as instructive rather than destructive, you cultivate a life in which every struggle contributes to personal growth, every setback informs improvement, and every moment of hesitation becomes an opportunity to push forward, evolve, and thrive. Resistance transforms from a source of frustration into a source of empowerment. When approached intentionally, it becomes a signal, a guide, and a catalyst for growth. The more you engage with it, the more you expand your abilities, deepen self-awareness, and cultivate the resilience necessary for long-term success. Through this approach, resistance ceases to be something to fear and becomes a lifelong ally in your pursuit of mastery, achievement, and fulfillment. Chapter 10: Creating a Life That Resists Resistance. Resistance is not a temporary adversary, to be defeated once and forgotten. It is a lifelong companion, present in every pursuit that challenges comfort, habit, or fear. The goal is not to eliminate resistance that is impossible, but to design a life that anticipates it, confronts it proactively, and transforms it into a consistent signal for growth and action. Creating a life that resists resistance requires integration, combining mindset, habits, systems, support, and reflection into a coherent framework that makes persistence habitual, sustainable, and almost automatic. It is a transformation from reacting to obstacles to thriving because of them. The first step in building a life that resists resistance is anticipation. Resistance rarely arrives without warning. It often follows predictable patterns, routines, or triggers. By reflecting on past experiences, you can identify situations, tasks, and emotional states where resistance has historically emerged. Perhaps you procrastinate when tasks feel complex, avoid confrontation in difficult conversations, or experience self-doubt before public presentations. Anticipating these moments allows preparation, mentally, emotionally, and strategically, so that resistance is no longer a surprise but a predictable signal to engage your tools and resources. Awareness transforms resistance from a reactive crisis into a manageable cue for deliberate action. Preparation is closely tied to strategy. Once you recognize where resistance will likely appear, you can design intentional responses. Strategies include breaking tasks into smaller steps, scheduling dedicated time blocks for high-resistance tasks, creating accountability mechanisms, and employing psychological tools such as visualization or affirmations. Preparing in advance reduces the friction associated with hesitation, diminishes the energy required to act, and increases confidence. The more you anticipate resistance and design actionable strategies, the more you transform a moment of potential paralysis into an opportunity for momentum. Building habits is central to a life that resists resistance. Habits are automatic behaviors that reduce reliance on fluctuating willpower, motivation, or emotional energy. When intentional habits are established, action becomes a default, even in the presence of fear, doubt, or distraction. These habits are not merely routines, they are carefully designed structures that align with your values, goals, and long-term vision. Daily practices such as consistent work sessions, reflective journaling, or structured planning reduce the mental load of decision-making and make facing resistance less daunting. By embedding persistence into habit, resistance loses its power to dictate behavior. Accountability systems reinforce habitual action. Sharing goals, progress, and challenges with mentors, peers, or supportive communities provides both motivation and feedback. Accountability ensures that resistance is addressed publicly, reducing the likelihood of avoidance. Moreover, support networks provide perspective and encouragement during difficult moments. They normalize resistance, demonstrating that hesitation is not failure but a universal aspect of growth. In a life designed to resist resistance, accountability acts as both a compass and a stabilizing force, guiding action when internal energy wanes. Mindset is a core component of resistance-proof living. Adopting a growth-oriented, resilient mindset allows you to perceive resistance not as an adversary but as an instructor. Every obstacle becomes a lesson, every moment of hesitation a guidepost for improvement. Courage, self-discipline, and adaptability are cultivated over time, not in a single encounter. A mindset trained to embrace discomfort, uncertainty, and challenge transforms resistance from a source of frustration into a predictable, instructive force that signals the direction of growth. This perspective is crucial because it shapes how you interpret every difficult moment and how you respond to it. System design complements habits and mindset. Life can be engineered to reduce unnecessary friction and increase the likelihood of consistent action. This involves creating environments that limit distractions, establishing routines that automate productive behaviors, and implementing tools that track progress and provide feedback. Systems act as external scaffolding, ensuring that even when internal motivation fluctuates, action continues. For instance, setting up a dedicated workspace, blocking social media during focus hours, or pre-planning tasks reduces opportunities for resistance to take hold. Well-designed systems convert intention into action reliably. Reflection and self-assessment sustain long-term resilience. Regularly reviewing progress, successes, and setbacks allows you to refine habits, strategies, and mindset. Reflection transforms isolated experiences of resistance into cumulative wisdom. By documenting lessons learned, identifying patterns, and celebrating growth, you reinforce the belief that obstacles are surmountable and that persistence produces tangible results. Reflection also strengthens self-awareness, which is critical for anticipating future resistance and responding strategically. A life that resists resistance is one in which insight is continually integrated into action. Flexibility is essential. Resistance is dynamic and often unpredictable. Life circumstances, emotional states, or external pressures can introduce new forms of hesitation. A rigid approach may falter under these conditions. By cultivating adaptability, you maintain momentum despite changing challenges. Flexibility involves adjusting strategies, experimenting with different approaches, and recognizing when persistence requires recalibration. It ensures that resistance is not a stopping point, but a prompt to innovate, iterate, and continue moving forward. Emotional regulation amplifies resilience. Resistance frequently triggers fear, frustration, or self-doubt, which can immobilize action. Techniques such as mindfulness, controlled breathing, and cognitive reframing stabilize emotional responses, enabling deliberate action even under stress. Emotional regulation allows you to engage resistance with clarity and focus, rather than being driven by reactive impulses. Over time, consistent regulation strengthens confidence, making it easier to face future challenges and maintain momentum through difficult periods. Integrating purpose into every action enhances persistence. When tasks, habits, and goals are tied to meaningful values, resistance loses much of its power. Motivation fueled by meaning is more durable than motivation based solely on external rewards or immediate gratification. Aligning daily actions with long-term vision ensures that even when resistance arises, the reasons to act remain compelling and deeply personal. Purpose provides both energy and direction, transforming effort into progress and challenge into significance. Incremental growth compounds over time. Each encounter with resistance, each moment of persistence, and each small success contributes to cumulative development. A life designed to resist resistance recognizes that progress is rarely linear but additive. Small steps repeated consistently produce exponential results. Resistance becomes less intimidating because past experiences demonstrate the capacity to overcome obstacles. Momentum builds, confidence solidifies, and persistence becomes a defining characteristic rather than a temporary effort. Accountability, habit, mindset, systems, reflection, flexibility, emotional regulation, and purpose are not isolated tools, they form an interconnected ecosystem. Each component reinforces the others, creating a self-sustaining framework for long-term success. In this ecosystem, resistance is continuously anticipated, managed, and leveraged. Action becomes habitual, courage becomes natural, and setbacks serve as guidance rather than defeat. Life itself becomes a laboratory for mastering the art of persistent engagement. Anticipation, preparation, and systematization also reduce the energy required to confront resistance. When obstacles are expected and strategies are pre-designed, the mind and body can act with reduced hesitation. By automating responses through habit, structured systems, and supportive networks, resistance is less likely to dominate decision-making. This creates a state in which action becomes the default, and resistance becomes a predictable cue to apply tools rather than a source of paralysis. Finally, creating a life that resists resistance requires consistency and commitment. Momentum is sustained not by occasional bursts of willpower, but by ongoing alignment between values, habits, systems, and mindset. Persistence becomes part of identity. You are someone who acts despite hesitation, who moves forward despite fear, and who consistently transforms resistance into opportunity. Over time, this approach produces mastery, not only of external challenges, but of the internal obstacles that once limited growth. In summary, a life that resists resistance is not defined by the absence of obstacles but by the presence of preparation, strategy, and deliberate action. By anticipating resistance, building supportive systems, cultivating habits, integrating purpose, reflecting on progress, and maintaining adaptability, you create an environment in which persistence is habitual and action is sustainable. Resistance becomes a teacher, a guide, and a signal for growth. Each challenge faced strengthens resilience, builds confidence, and reinforces momentum. Through intentional design, you transform resistance from a roadblock into a pathway, creating a life in which obstacles are expected, navigated skillfully, and ultimately leveraged for personal and professional growth. Resistance, once feared, becomes a partner in achievement. By integrating mindset, habits, systems, support, reflection, and purpose, you construct a life where obstacles are anticipated, courage is habitual, and growth is continuous. You are no longer at the mercy of resistance. You have built a framework that transforms every challenge into an opportunity, every hesitation into action, and every moment of difficulty into a stepping stone toward mastery, fulfillment, and long-term success. Conclusion: embracing resistance as a path to mastery. Resistance is an inescapable part of life. It shows up whenever we step outside comfort zones, pursue meaningful goals, or challenge familiar patterns. Whether it manifests as internal hesitation, self-doubt, fear, or external obstacles and distractions, resistance is universal. Yet, as this book has emphasized, resistance is not a signal to stop or retreat, it is a signal to engage. To embrace resistance as a path to mastery requires a shift in perspective, to see resistance not as a roadblock, but as a guide, a teacher, and an indicator of where growth, skill development, and personal evolution await. From the beginning, we defined resistance as both internal and external. Internally, it manifests as fear, procrastination, perfectionism, and self-doubt. Externally, it can appear as competing responsibilities, environmental distractions, or unsupportive circumstances. Recognizing resistance is the first step to mastering it. Awareness allows you to observe the moments when hesitation arises, to identify triggers, and to respond intentionally rather than reactively. By acknowledging resistance without judgment, you reclaim the power to act and transform obstacles into opportunities for learning and progress. The journey through resistance is inseparable from the development of mindset. A resilient, growth-oriented mindset enables individuals to interpret challenges as opportunities rather than threats. Fear becomes a signpost pointing toward areas of potential expansion, and self-doubt becomes a cue to strengthen skills or reinforce self-trust. Courage is cultivated incrementally through repeated engagement with discomfort. Each step taken despite hesitation builds confidence, fortifies persistence, and diminishes the paralyzing influence of resistance. By embracing the discomfort of growth, mastery emerges gradually but consistently. Action is the bridge between insight and transformation. Knowledge alone is insufficient to overcome resistance. Courage without application remains dormant. Small, consistent actions taken in the presence of fear and doubt accumulate over time, creating momentum. These incremental steps, whether completing a challenging task, speaking up despite anxiety, or practicing a skill until mastery improves, compound into significant achievements. Resistance is not eliminated, it is continually encountered, but each engagement strengthens the capacity to act decisively, persistently, and purposefully. Habits and systems are the scaffolding for a life that thrives despite resistance. When daily routines are aligned with personal values and long-term goals, action becomes more automatic, reducing dependence on fluctuating willpower. Systems, whether they involve accountability, structured time management, or environmental design, support consistent engagement and reduce the friction that resistance exploits. By intentionally designing your life to anticipate and respond to obstacles, persistence becomes habitual, and resistance is no longer a force that dominates choices, but a signal that action is meaningful. Reflection is equally vital. Each encounter with resistance carries lessons waiting to be discovered. Journaling, self-assessment, and mindful observation allow you to extract insights from setbacks, failures, and challenges. Reflection consolidates learning, reinforces patterns of effective response, and strengthens resilience. Over time, you develop a repository of strategies and insights that empower you to navigate future obstacles with greater skill, confidence, and composure. Resistance, when examined thoughtfully, becomes a continual source of personal and professional growth. Fear and self-doubt, the most insidious forms of resistance, are transformed through deliberate engagement. By facing what feels uncomfortable, reframing challenges, and taking incremental action, fear is diminished and confidence is strengthened. Self-doubt shifts from a paralyzing judgment to a constructive signal, highlighting areas for skill development, preparation, or mindset adjustment. Courage is cultivated like a muscle, built through repetition, reinforced through success, and refined through reflection. The more you engage with these internal challenges, the more resilient and capable you become. One of the most powerful realizations in mastering resistance is the principle of reframing setbacks. Challenges, mistakes, and failures are not indicators of inadequacy. They are opportunities to learn, recalibrate, and strengthen your capacity. Each setback is a feedback mechanism, a chance to analyze what worked, what didn't, and how to adjust future actions. By adopting a growth-oriented perspective, you transform resistance from a source of discouragement into a teacher that guides strategy, skill development, and personal evolution. Persistence and consistency are central to this process. Resistance thrives on inconsistency, hesitation, and fragmented effort. Mastery emerges not through sporadic bursts of willpower, but through sustained, deliberate action over time. Each day you choose to act despite hesitation, each moment you confront discomfort with intention, and each challenge you meet with strategy and focus reinforces your ability to overcome resistance. Mastery is built through repetition, accumulation, and the compounding effect of deliberate engagement. Support systems amplify your capacity to push through resistance. Mentors, peers, and communities provide encouragement, accountability, and perspective. They normalize the experience of hesitation, offer guidance, and model strategies for persistence. Resistance becomes less isolating and more manageable when experienced in collaboration with others who share similar aspirations. Social support reinforces momentum, provides feedback, and strengthens both confidence and resolve. By surrounding yourself with allies, resistance becomes a shared experience rather than a solitary battle. Purpose anchors action in the face of resistance. When every task, habit, and goal is aligned with deeply held values, the motivation to persist transcends fleeting emotions or temporary discomfort. Purpose imbues effort with significance, transforming mundane or difficult tasks into meaningful contributions to personal growth, relationships, or long-term aspirations. Resistance may still be present, but the weight of purpose provides energy, focus, and clarity to act despite internal or external challenges. Integration of all these strategies, mindset, action, habits, systems, reflection, support, and purpose, creates a life that not only endures resistance but leverages it. Resistance signals growth opportunities, directs focus, and highlights areas for improvement. Each engagement builds skills, fortifies resilience, and strengthens confidence. Over time, life becomes a continuous process of facing challenges, learning, and evolving. The presence of resistance is no longer a deterrent but a catalyst, accelerating mastery and deepening fulfillment. The practice of embracing resistance is both personal and ongoing. It is a commitment to act intentionally, to confront fear and doubt, and to persist even when the path is uncomfortable. It requires patience, self-compassion, and a willingness to experiment, fail, reflect, and adjust. Mastery is not a destination but a process, a lifestyle of engagement with obstacles as a natural and beneficial part of growth. By consistently applying the lessons from this book, resistance is gradually transformed from an adversary into a partner, guiding each step toward greater achievement, fulfillment, and self-mastery. Ultimately, mastery is achieved not by avoiding resistance but by consistently engaging with it, learning from it, and integrating those lessons into daily life. Each small, deliberate action contributes to cumulative growth. Each challenge faced, each fear confronted, and each moment of hesitation overcome strengthens the mind, fortifies resolve, and enhances skill. Resistance, once feared, becomes a reliable indicator of where growth is possible and a powerful engine for progress. In closing, embrace resistance as an integral part of your journey. See it as a guide that highlights opportunities for development, a mirror that reflects both strengths and growth areas, and a signal that you are moving toward meaningful goals. Cultivate awareness, develop strategies, act consistently, and lean into discomfort with courage. Through persistence, reflection, and intentional action, resistance transforms from a source of frustration into a catalyst for personal and professional mastery. The life you create through this practice is not one without obstacles, but one in which every challenge contributes to growth, every struggle enhances capability, and every encounter with resistance moves you closer to mastery. By embracing resistance fully, you unlock the profound potential within yourself. You gain resilience, deepen your abilities, and discover the satisfaction of achieving in the face of challenge. Resistance is inevitable, but mastery is attainable. The more you learn to lean into it, the more empowered, confident, and capable you become. A life that embraces resistance is a life that continuously grows, achieves, and flourishes. Thank you for reading this book. I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to leave us a review. TM Light. Disclaimer. This book was created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. While every effort was made to ensure the accuracy and relevance of the content, readers should note that this cannot be considered professional advice. Readers are encouraged to apply their own judgment and consult experts where needed.